Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Beyond the Cloud, Sovereign AI Governance and the Future of Intelligent Enterprise in Nigeria. Please stay with us while other people join, and then we can go ahead. We'll be starting this session at 2:10. We're waiting for more people to join us. Thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. Please, if you can hear me, and a thumbs up or something so that I know that you can hear me.
Olamide, I think you're muted.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I started speaking. I was so good, everyone. Welcome to this Descasio and Africa Tech Radio webinar series. Our thank you to our partners, Pan Africa Center for AI Ethics and Kleinfeld LP. Today, we're discussing AI and the future of intelligent enterprise in Nigeria. I'm Olamide Daniel, and moderating this session with me is Adeze Umoba. So I, Olamide Daniel, I'm a media professional with interest in technology. And as a presenter and content creator, I drive engaging radio shows and podcasts on Africa Tech Radio, whose goal is to help Africans understand technology, how it affects our daily lives through insightful educational, entertaining audio and visual content. I'm also committed to social impact and I'm very active in projects that involve people empowerment. So we have seen the headlines about AI is changing the world, but here in Nigeria, we are asking a more specific question. How do we make AI work for us securely, legally, and at scale? Today, we're moving past the hype and talking about sovereign AI, the framework that ensures that Nigerian businesses stay in the driver's seat of their data and destiny. And as I said earlier, co-moderating this session with me is Adeze Nwaba. Adeze is a legal and governance professional multidisciplinary background spanning law, human resource management, business advisory, particularly on how regulatory and governance framework shape modern businesses. She has contributed as a researcher with Mankind and Intelligence and Artificial Intelligence, examining legal rights and regulatory considerations linked to evolving technologies. She has also contributed to the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, GPAI, Diversity and Gender Equity Study in Sub-Saharan Africa, exploring the relationship between AI system and human resources management. She has authored several articles on AI-related legal and governance issues and advises on the regulatory risk and policy implication of deploying intelligence system. Hi, Ada. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Olamide. Thanks for the introduction, and doing great. And it's good to have everyone here. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Yeah, thank you very much. And today's webinar, we have some very seasoned speakers and experts on our panel today, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce them. First, we have Kingsley Owadara. He's an AI ethicist at the Pan-Africa Center for AI Ethics, an organization committed to fostering the development, deployment, and the use of AI in a manner that prioritizes human-centric values. At the heart of his role, he spearheads the initiative to craft and refine ethical AI frameworks, ensuring that artificial intelligence technologies are developed, deployed with a strong emphasis on human values, ethics, and inclusivity. Beyond his contributions to policy development, he has also been an active voice in the AI ethics community, engaging in numerous projects, dialogues, advocacy efforts. He also works in promoting a human-centered approach to AI across its life cycle, from design, training to deployment, and practical applications, specifically within the African context. Thank you so much, Kingsley, for being here. We also have Daniel Oburi, who is a seasoned technology executive with over 12 years of experience driving enterprise transformation, cloud strategy, and digital innovation across West Africa. As the head of technology services at Descasio, he leads cross-functional teams in delivering impactful solutions across cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, DevOps, automation, modern workspace, and data analytics. In his role, Daniel provides strategic oversight for solution architecture, pre-sales engineering, and enterprise service delivery, playing a critical role in shaping Decasio's position as a digital transformation partner. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing to make our system safe. Yeah, so thanks everyone again for being here and making time with us. We're going to jump right into it. And as the topic says, or as our topic today is to understand what is sovereign AI, to understand how we can bring it in, apply it in practical terms to our everyday work and our businesses. So Daniel and Kingsley, I'm going to start off with the both of you. How are you doing today? Kingsley, I'll start off with you. How are you doing today? And what is sovereign AI in the simplest form that you can tell us about it?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Ada. Hi, everyone on the call. Hi, Daniel. Um, really glad to, Olamide, hi. Really glad to be here. When we talk about sovereign AI in its simplest form, is we refer to the ability for either a company or a government to be able to develop and have control over the AI that's AI within its within the organization or within the context, and ensure that it is contextualized and it meets the demands of the people. It's just borrowing word from what we say sovereignty of government, when we say it's like having control over the government, over the state without any form of external control, right? So sovereign AI is a government have control over the entire life cycle of the AI that operates within the territory.
Thank you for that, making the connection between the sovereignty and the government. That's great. Daniel, over to you. How are you doing today? And what is sovereign AI? Tell it to us like a 5-year-old, as they commonly say.
I think simplifying always helps, and Kirsty has done a good job. I'm just going to add to that. But first of all, I'm doing good. You asked how I was doing. I'm doing very, very good, and I'm always excited to have conversations like this. So just look at it this way. So in addition to what he had mentioned, look at the things that power AI itself: data, infrastructure. So how much control do you have over those things? Think about things that then become critical in your AI system, like compliance, right? You start, because AI at the moment has started handling a lot of mission critical workload and decision making. So you want to be in a position where you are able to, important things like compliance, important things like what even trains your AI are now more within your control and your reach. Once you have that kind of system in place, which includes how it's governed also, then you are speaking sovereignty.
Thanks for that answer. So I want to bring it home a bit. Every day we hear about the development of a new AI tool like ChatGPT and the many models of it, and Google's on or Twitter with Grok,
Go.
and so many, or X, sorry, so many versions of AI tools. And I wonder, is AI development or AI project, is there a Nigerian market for it? Is there any homegrown AI projects that are currently developed in Nigeria? I'll keep that question with you, Daniel.
Is there a market for it? There definitely is a market for it. I would say, interestingly, we've started. Nigeria is actually one of the fastest adopters of AI, actually. The only challenge is how we adopt it, right? How, are we really getting the most value from it? Are we already scaling in production? Or are we still at the experimentation stage? That's just the challenge. There definitely is the market for it. There definitely are use cases for it. Across different verticals, from the healthcare to governance to education systems, there is energy sector, there are multiple use cases already for it. And I think we've even gone beyond the stage of thinking if we need AI to now trying to figure out how to properly scale and use AI. That is where we are actually. So they definitely say there is a market for it.
Thank you. And when you talk about scale, oftentimes Nigerian projects or AI projects, they're often stuck at the pilot stage, and many of the issues are mainly related around funds, because developing AI tools, it's a very expensive, capital-intensive project with the technical expertise that is needed. So aside from lack of funds, what other technical walls have this Nigerian developers of AI tools, what are they experiencing or what are they facing in terms of bringing this project to their full cycle to deployment stage for Nigeria market?
So I would, to make it interesting, actually, I would even say funds is actually not the biggest challenge. Of course, it's expensive. Infrastructure is expensive and all of this, but that's not the biggest challenge. Having sat with a few people who have been trying to develop AI systems and all of that, I would say the biggest challenge that I even see is structure. And when I say structure, underlying structure. So a lot of times, a lot of enterprises, businesses start doing, they build AI pretty much like they're building things in sandbox. Everybody's trying stuff, right? We've seen AI as experiments, as ideas. So everybody can see what you've done and everybody's building stuff. And that's great. It's great to get everybody involved. But when you are building to scale, you need to have proper planning. What is the data that is feeding your AI, that your AI is learning? How is it structured? So there are some things that need to be done from foundation. I was having a conversation with the team sometime, and they were talking about how they've done this tool, that tool, and it's interesting. It's there in the sandbox. And then when we started asking certain questions on the security of it, on where the data is coming from, and all of that, we could see a lot of stuttering, right? And those are the things that actually even prevent you from scaling properly. So you have everybody building stuff in silos that can solve a problem of one team, one small team here, or that team here. But does it really have, is it able to solve major enterprise problems? Is it able to be at a scale that you can sell it to major business to drive real impact? For that to happen, you know, there are things like your policy governance are there, but do you even have a centralized data system that this AI feeds from? Those are the things that, if those kind of things are in place already, then it's easy to start building stuff that scale. So I think that's one thing that's needed to help to scale from beyond your pilot.
I sort of agree with you because a lot of technology advancement, especially for Nigeria, there's lots of investments, always seed round groupings, especially in Lagos. You're always hearing, oh, this person just they have this X amount of money to invest in this. So I agree with now you say it, I agree with you that funds may not be the initial issue. And we have data in Nigeria, collective data is still a challenge that we're faced with in different aspects of work. So yeah, I actually agree with you on that. And thanks for that answer. Kingsley, in your introduction, you mentioned about sovereignty and connected it to about how a country operates, and that's tying it back to what sovereign AI is. And from an ethical standpoint, can you tell me why, or tell us why it's important for a nation's AI to reflect its own cultural and ethical values rather than those programmed in Silicon Valley, which is meant to be the global home of technology development? So, yeah.
Yes. So, just building on my previous conversation on sovereign AI, for a company or a country to have a sovereign AI, AI is like a collective word that we use to, group those things. But there are key pillars that really power this technology. And the first is the data, the second is the algorithm, and the third is the model. So a country must be able to have control over how how these three things work for you to be able to say that it's sovereign. For instance, starting with the model, a country must have control over data. And when I mean data, not just as it relates to just so data as a whole, either the data for training, how data in residence, how data flows, also the regulation of the data. For the algorithm, the country must have what it takes, because algorithm is the technology that powers the AI. So the country must have the people, which is the workforce, must have the funding for research and other things that could make discovery of algorithm within the country possible. And then for the compute is now the infrastructure that powers this. And then we are talking about data centers, we're talking about internet, we are talking about power supply, we are talking about, access to raw materials. So for you to have like a holistic conversation of sovereign AI, and for a country not to be at the mercy of Silicon Valley, it means that you must have control over these three things, over these three pillars. And that is why if you look at the global north and the global south, the competitive advantage in the global north is that they have control over these three things. And when you see, countries in the global north, doing some moves in African countries, it's not just move because they want to move, but most times they're trying to secure their interests, particularly in raw materials that could help build this model. So for a country like ours, Nigeria, to have a sovereign AI, it is really good, because most times, if you look at it in the reality of its sense, and I'm looking at it from the ethics, standpoints, AI, procurement in Africa suffers from what we call snake oil. We call it snake oil. So what is snake oil, right? We are overhyping an AI system. So we are overhyping its capacity, we are hyping its capabilities, we are hyping, its what it could do. But in most sense, AI system, overhyping of AI system, which it could work over the way it is developed, when it is moved from that environment to another environment, it almost would not work. And that is why in the early days of AI, you see a lot of bias issue. For instance, bias issue such that I refer to sometimes back as 5, 6 years ago, where Google algorithm could detect black couples as chimpanzees, where so AI tools could, could not advise properly for people with disability, so all these things they are result of, when a country take charge of its AI. These are the advantages that come with, being able to have control of the AI system that, that is homegrown AI system that happens within the country. It helps to reduce this hyping. I mean, and this hyping is even happening till now. Now, this is the era of AI agents. Everybody's saying, yeah, build AI agent for this, build AI agent for that. I built 10,000 AI agents. Some people can even tell you that, you don't need, you don't need anybody. Just get 5 AI agents to do the work of 10 employees. Well, why I'm not against it. It works, but we must also know that these things are most times are not contextualized, and they could suffer from context when relating with people in the actual world.
Thanks, Kingsley. I think while you were speaking, one thing that stood out to me was the use of the word ethics. And it's not something that commonly connects when you're speaking with it's normally maybe heard more in social circles or social development circles, law, justice. So in terms of technology, could you help us understand what AI ethics means? And in the context of Nigeria, how does a strong ethical framework actually help Nigerian companies scale AI projects faster?
Okay, so in the normal broad parlance, when we talk about ethics, we refer to what is good, what is bad. But if you are using this for importing this technology, it suffers from what we call law of generalization, because what is, and then probably false generalization, because what is right here in Nigeria might not be right, in other country. For Nigeria, it is disrespectful to give somebody something with right hand. In other countries, it might be disrespectful to give something with the left hand. For others, it's normal. So it shows that, and again, multiple conscience. What is right to me definitely cannot be right to you. And that's because our upbringing is different, our realities are different, everything is different. But when we talk about ethics as it relates to technology, what we are looking at it from a global standard as to what makes human human and what makes technology technology. And the idea of ethics, it's not a thing that you think after you had developed, a technology. So we are looking at, you cannot build a right technology from a wrong foundation. So if, for instance, with the current suits that within Anthropic and writers that they had at the beginning, I mean, I think early this year, late last year-ish, where, when Anthropic wanted to build a model, they went to buy books from authors and, they copyrighted these books, used it to train their models and, destroyed it. And the authors were coming to sue them that, why do you take our books without our consent? Also, when some AI companies also wanted to train their model, they went to get data, and you see several suits coming. I mean, the whole idea is that, aside from the fact that you are building AI with the, in quotes, wrong foundation, because, there have been series of arguments, as to, licensing, permission, ownership of data. I mean, this is not even what we're talking about here. We're talking about, how do we ensure that technology is serving those that it ought to serve, and it is not widening the inequality gap? It is not causing harm to people, either in its strict sense or even, indirectly. For instance, in a strict sense, where it encourages people to get into vices. get into vices, or indirectly encouraging people, to do what ought not to be done. So there are a series of conversations, but what we are looking at is that the general picture of AI ethics is still, we are looking at how do we make technology, how do technology make people more human and not less human?
Thanks for that. I'll bring it to you, Kingsley. I'm sorry, to Daniel now. And I think understanding when you're developing AI, it involves making it relevant to what people need on a day-to-day. And in your role, you've been at the helm of developing and creating, I believe, numerous intelligent software and systems over your professional career. So I think to understand this even a bit better in practical terms, when we're thinking about AI, we're probably just thinking about software or you're focusing it on the cloud. And how do you think that hosting AI on a sovereign Nigerian infrastructure can even improve the speed and reliability of a company's intelligence system? So in your day-to-day, do you think that hosting data on a Nigerian sovereign infrastructure would be beneficial to the work that you do?
Okay, thanks. So you mentioned two things, and I'll take them separately. You mentioned speed, you mentioned reliability. So speed, that simple conversation of geography. When you talk about latency, right? Closer it is to you, because there are places. Remember, first of all, as I've established how centralized data is what would really power and make you see value from the AI, right? Look at when you are in specific region where you need large data sets, right, to train and where the use case where people need to use this service or solution. The closer you are, the faster you have access to this, the lower your latency. That's what brings speed. But let's take that aside. Let's just talk about value generally, right? Value generally. What would having your sovereign AI or your data hosted locally, what value will it bring? Beyond the hosting, sovereignty is beyond just where you're hosting. You're looking at what is even being trained, what data is used to train your models, right? What are the context to it and all of that. Those kind of things are what brings real value. Because if you're trying to build say you want to build a system, let's look at the financial sector, and your system is able to be able to do things like profiling, right? Or you profile people for maybe for loans, look at risk and things like that. Yeah. And you are not looking at the economy, you're not training the data of the very economy that these people are meant to serve. Your AI can guide your own decision making, can lead wrong decision making, right? In terms of speed, that's fine. But in terms of that value, you're training with the right data, right? You're training with the right data and right context. And then the value that you get is then based on this. If you look, for example, if you're trying to make decisions, just for a quick chat, just look at your job function, for example, their job functions, say a mechanic, say a nurse, see whatever job function, and then you ask ChatGPT, for example, for what salary range you probably should have and all of that. It might give you values that are not exactly coherent with what's happening in our client. It can give you figures that wouldn't work. And by the time this is literally something that even happened in real life, a business was trying to basically do some analysis to then do some decision making, and they're just picking up data from different AI chatbots and talking and all of that. And then your values were skewed. You make decision based on that, you will make serious economic mistake. But imagine you are making decisions like that with data that you are with systems that are built with data that you have here, trained on data that you have here with the right context. Then you're able to make better decisions. Then you are able to have reliable systems that give you real values. So yes, that's it. It provides that value, and then also there are things around, because when we start talking enterprise, when we start talking land business, there are also things around policies and governance. When you start dealing with regulated industry, very regulated industries, you want to make sure that your systems, right? I'm just using systems generally for AI and the rest, right? Are compliant to a level where you don't get into trouble, right? How are you carrying out things? What are you doing? How are you managing data? Because every sovereign entity, let's put it that way, have their own laws, have their own regulations, their own rules that guide, how we do transactions and all of that. by the time you've trained the data with the right context, train your AI with the right context and with the right data, with right information in the right context, then you are able to also plug in your right regulatory compliance from the get-go, right? So those are the values that you get by, using sovereign systems, basically.
Awesome. Thanks for that. That sounds like numerous benefits that we would like to get into. So again, thanks everyone that is here. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We're going to definitely address all questions that may have arisen during the course of the webinar. And also, we believe that many businesses are here and also people that are just interested generally in the topic to see how they can relate it to their day-to-day business and yeah, to their day-to-day business. So we're going to launch a poll right now for everyone to participate in so that we can understand where you are in your journey of deploying AI systems in your businesses. So I'm going to have my colleague launch that, and please feel free to take the poll as honest as you can. And we're going to reach out. Our hope is to reach out after the webinar, see where people are, see what support that can be provided, or if there's more information needed in what you need to do. The poll is live now. If you have any question about any of the question or about the questions on the poll, also feel free to drop that in the chat and we would reach out. So I'm going to give like a minute for the poll to be completed and we'll jump back in. All right. Thanks, everyone. That's been a minute. We're going to go right back into our webinar. And thanks so much, Kingsley and Daniel, so far. Like the conversation will be quite engaging. So, Daniel, in your response to my last question, you talked about laws and you talked about regulations, and it goes without saying that AI, it's a very regulated sector. Like the deployment of AI, deployment of technology is a very regulated sector. And I think I would like to understand a little bit more how laws play a role, or what kind of laws play big roles in how you create the systems and how you like what you bear in mind while you're deploying your project. So can you just talk to us a bit more of the regulatory side of things?
So when you speak about regulations, so you even want to talk about, first of all, what data are you even using to train your system, right? And then even what data should you even have access to? It's important. What data should you have access to? What kind of data can be exposed? Should be exposed to your system or by your system, for example. You don't want to pick a system that then starts to expose personal identifiable information, for example. You don't want a system that then put out information that can put people at risk, for example. You do not want that to happen. Those are important things. And then there's also, and I wouldn't want to just speak on laws without even picking ethics too. Kirsty was saying something important about systems that could harm people. Does your system then make people suffer loss that should not be suffered, right? And there are all of those conversations. Also, when you're looking at governance generally, right, you want to see that for your industry itself, there are practices that are ideal. There are practices, and these are specifics to different industries. You want to see that your industry is built, your system is built to comply with those things. So, for example, I was giving an example of the financial sector, for example, or even outside that, you're having a system that is used to do decision making, right, for profiling and things like that. You want to be able to say that the metrics, your system is not trained in such a way that it's then biased and it's then making people, how do I put it now? Then disenfranchising certain people that the law would permit that should be a partaker of things that they should naturally benefit from. So those are some laws that you want to look out for. But a lot of it will still have to do with data that you expose, data that you consume, and all of that.
Thanks, Daniel. So, still on the topic of laws, in Nigeria, the primary legislation for governing personal data protection is the Nigeria Data Protection Act, and it's very GDPR aligned. And it's also established Data Protection Commission, which is to help regulate data processing and enhance data subject rights, and also dish out penalties for erring organizations. So my question is, when a company moves their data from their offshore servers to a sovereign local setup in Nigeria, what are the immediate benefits in terms of latency, data control, and how does this help them in meeting the Nigeria Data Protection Act requirements?
Well, I'll say this. So you've almost answered the question yourself, but it's beyond even just moving your data here. That's where I would make it. I would twist that a little bit. So moving your data here gives you that value. So you've achieved your data residency part. But and that's why we're talking about sovereign AI now. When you move your data here, but it's still being processed elsewhere, you are still connecting to, models that are outside, you're hosted outside here, and your processing is still happening outside, right? Then you are still flouting this, right? So after having your data here, the systems themselves that interact with this data, can we also have them here, right? Those are the next things that you want to look at. And by the time we start to have all of those things in place, then we really start to speak to the values of sovereignty you mentioned, which helps you with the right contextual systems, right? Which helps you see that the values that you get are values that speaks to your own economy, speaks to your pain points as a sovereign entity, right? Then you start to build that. And then it also helps us from there are also other benefits. Look at geopolitical situation. I was giving an example somewhere about because politics is funny, but I'm saying geopolitical this time around. So say, for example, as a sovereign nation, we are then having where you're having trade wars, for example, or for some reasons you have a sanction and then you can't do business. You can't do business with certain other entities, right? So, for example, for some reasons, the UK says, "Oh, we cannot," or the US says, "We cannot host Nigeria data anymore." Or beyond even data, we cannot. Businesses owned by the US can no longer do businesses with us for some reasons. And then imagine people who already have, or you already work with systems over there, and your entire the country infrastructure is relying on it. All the models are using in your key industries like your banking, your energy, and all of those things are seated over there. And then what happens when your relationship has to stop abruptly at the time? It means the entire nation gets crippled immediately. You don't want to tell the ripple effect of that on the entire economy. This is not just a business, an organization losing funds, losing. This is an entire nation economy that is going to be crippled. So these are part of the reasons why we need to start having these conversations of growing and having our systems in here. And as I said, it's beyond just hosting them, it's also the processing of them here, the context in which we used to build and design them. So those are some benefits that you want to look at.
Thank you for that. I think when you were speaking, like connecting it's so interesting. Data is actually, it plays a big part in politics. You can cripple businesses and nations by the policies you put in place for data. And oftentimes the global north do policies that affect negatively the global south. So it will be very important that we're developing just not the tools, but also the full systems that can also process that data. So if we're connecting to oil, we can mine, refine, process, and also sell our own data. So that's very interesting. That it's a lot to develop. We have to develop all the capabilities for Nigeria to be able to do all that, so that the world don't play politics with us. Awesome. Kingsley, so bringing this back to you again, and just as what we're saying, how politics can play a role in data management and also creating biases for tech users in the global south, specifically Nigeria. So how does having local sovereign control over our data allow us to better identify and fix biases that specifically affects Nigerian users?
Thank you. You see, biases are everywhere. As an individual, I have some specific kind of bias towards some things, which might not generally mean they're actually wrong, right? But it's just my biases. But for artificial intelligence and technology, what we are saying about biases is such that biases should, when a technology is creating biases, it should not be such that it is, taking, categorizing an entire race or an entire group of persons and classifying them as what they are not. But what sovereign AI really helps to do is that, and as I think Daniel was mentioning about, the geopolitics of AI, and sometimes this actually happens in everything. Let me give, for instance, if you go on a popular chat and you ask who is the best Afro musician, right? Who is the best musician? You would see series of, answers. Now, the series of answers you are seeing, if you want to trace the source, you'll be tracing the source to probably something that was documented on Bloomberg, on Wall Street, or on another blog that is not in Nigeria. So these things are shaping how our reality could look like. So you see, these are biases, right? Because the systems, the models are trained with data that are out, that most times are not stories that are not written by Nigeria in Nigeria. So if we are now using such, you'll see that there are some inherent biases that are happening, not because the developers of the model want the biases to be present, but because that is the closest data they have access to. So it is usually good for sovereign AI. It's good that both regulatory steps and also technical steps. First, for regulatory steps, let's even look at it, as it relates to an organization. An organization needs to, enforce, AI use policy. When I mean AI use policy, what kind of AI do we use here? And also to have like a log on the kind of AI that are permitted in the organization. If you are saying that ban AI in organization, it's a lie. Because if you are saying ban AI, there'll be shadow use. People will be shadowing it. Those that, people will use it. So it's good that you have some sort of a logbook as to the kind of AIs that are used. And when I mean the kind of AIs that are used, not just used for work for staff, but I refer to when you are building your core infrastructure. For instance, you are using Copilots, you are using those platforms that are AI enabled. You need to know, okay, these are the platforms that are being used. Then to understand what are your own fairness principles, what are your own principles as an organization? Does it, have correlation with the principles of this AI organization that you're using? If yes, then you have that. Then technically, organizations, while deploying the use of AI, particularly when you are encouraging probably the use of agents and so on, it's good that you train this model to be contextual, to understand your customers, to understand your business nature, and to be able to relate with these customers. But while you're doing that, you must have in mind that there are laws that regulate data, for instance, the NDPA, and to know the extent at which the data you are sharing. But if you look at it globally, as a country, there have been series of efforts, to ensure that there is some sort of control over the AI that is happening now, that is used in Nigeria. Although there could be limited control, but it's a thing that has to do with no particular regulatory authority. It's a thing that has to do with, cumulative, like a joint use. For instance, most of us would have been aware of our, if you're using a smartphone in Nigeria, you would have seen Temu here and there. And yes, Temu, they use some sort of algorithms to personalize messages and to be able to enforce that these things are regulated. There is a recent announcement by the NDPC, Nigerian Data Protection Commission, that they're already investigating Temu. They've done that in the past for Meta and some other organizations that might not be public. But what we are saying is that since we do not have a commission for AI, right? The use of AI is still within the ambit of the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, also a bit between the ambit of NITDA, National Information Technology Agency, and a bit of also NDPC. So all these stakeholders, they come together to really look at how do you play part to ensure that we have control over what happens there, so that we don't have predictive technology that begins to spy on people. We do not have corporate technology that that will export data, technology that will process data in an unlawful way. I mean, there should be lawful processing of personal data and also other things, and to ensure that there is no gap. I think sometimes FCCPC also steps in when you're talking about consumers, to be sure that AI is not creating some sort of unfair market for some people than other people. So the idea of sovereign AI is that, yes, there are a lot of frameworks that should be in place, but most importantly, as it relates to organization, you have to make efforts when you are saying people should not use AI. Then you must create alternatives. You must create things that could make it easy for people to work better and smarter.
Thanks, Kingsley. Your answers are driving me to my next question. So we've speaking about AI sovereignty, and I think it would be good to bring to light, are there countries right now, maybe in Africa, that have actually employed or have deployed systems that encourage their AI sovereignty, and what lessons can Nigeria take from those countries to better manage our data here? And the reason why I speak about this in your response, you're talking about NITDA, you're talking about NDPA. There's a problem with duplicity of laws in Nigeria, and where you can't find you can't find everything you're looking for regarding one thing in one place. You speak about AI Commission. So these ideas that were floating around, is it actually practical? Is any country currently adopting it? And if they're adopting it, what are the highlights of what they're doing that Nigeria can adopt for our own use case?
Yes. So the idea of AI sovereignty actually is, when you look at it from the lens of the global South, efforts you see here and there are efforts that are pioneered by private organizations, not even governments, right? And what those private organizations are doing is that they are trying to build contextual models that could understand their language, that could understand, how life happens in that country. And I'll give series of examples of the ones I have, seen around. For instance, in South Africa, there is this organization, Masakani, that is led by Professor Vukosi. They have built a series of models that are particularly for, that are contextualized as it relates to culture within their states, within their country. In Nigeria, also, I've also seen few organizations here and they're trying to work on it. For instance, I think sometimes last year, there was this report that GSN released on small language model, SLM, and they were talking about, these small language models are able to understand the context of Nigeria. When I mean context of Nigeria, not just as to how Nigerians speak, but the peculiarity of Nigeria. For instance, Nigeria is faced with the internet speed. It means in some areas without internet, you almost should not have access to an AI system. So they are building the system to ensure that it's able to adapt to the context of Nigeria. I think last week I also saw a particular one that was in Ghana that I built to be contextualized with TWI within Ghana. But what I'm saying is that all efforts I've been seeing so far, that I've seen within Africa, are such that are led by private organizations, usually non-for-profit. But if you look at it, actually, I look at what if we really define if sovereignty is really sovereignty in the real sense. If we are saying that we want countries to have control over the air that goes within its territory, and then it takes an external donor to fund the projects that will give you sovereignty. So in that context, would it really be sovereignty? Because usually whoever blows the flute will definitely detect the tune. I mean, anybody that blows the piper will detect the tune. So there are a lot of things that are happening within closed doors that might not be public, but I have few reservations when I think a particular news about the Ghanaian government last week, how they sponsored a particular big tech to help them build, infrastructure, AI infrastructure as it relates to their company. And there was a lot of shredding that, how would you hire this particular organization to build this for you when you have localized and contextualized AI within your country and they're making examples. I personally have, concerns about it because for you to be able to build infrastructure, it must be built by people that understand what's happening. And that is why, earlier when I started making conversation, I talked about what are the three pillars that power AI system: the compute, the algorithm, and the data. You can have data, sufficient data, but you might not have what it takes to get sufficient algorithm as to train professionals, and so on. Then sometimes you can even have trained professionals, and you might not have the compute power to power the infrastructure as to, several things. I mean, infrastructure, whether I'm talking about electricity, internet, data centers, and so on. So all these things are really affecting. There are really some little things here and there that are drawing back Africa. And you see in the news, you see a particular organization donated X. For instance, the previous African AI Summit that was held last year in Kigali, there was a memorandum where a huge amount of money was promised to be donated to Africa to boost African AI ecosystem. Usually, after you hear such donation, we don't hear anything again until probably the next summit, and you hear something else, and again, you don't hear anything again. Well, I am not inside. I might not be totally able to speak most about it. I am speaking from an outsider view. I feel that beyond, the hype of AI, governments must be able to, if they cannot take the lead, they should empower organizations that have what it takes to build AI systems. And when I mean AI systems, I refer to foundational models. They're able to build foundational models, and foundational models will be able to power other systems, other businesses. So these are the things I have seen, except few regulations here and there: data protection, data privacy, strategy, continental this, continental that, and few, data training here and there. Those are the things I have seen about sovereignty going on so far in the global south.
Oh, thank you, Kingsley. Like, it actually leads directly into my next question to Daniel, because you're talking about creating, which is what I was saying, that you always hear amounts, huge sums of money being invested or donated or promised towards the deployment of AI systems. And sometimes it seems quite far-fetched. It seems very far, something that it's not readily available to the common person that is just developing. So my question to you, Daniel, is that we would all think that, or most of us may think that building sovereign is expensive more than public. So, and now, even for the funding of it, is not most times readily available. You either have to rely on government or rely on international organizations that have those fundings to provide to you to build your own infrastructure. So now, for example, I am a Nigerian CTO, Chief Information Officer, or the Chief Technology Officer of a company, and I'm looking at the long-term return on investment of owning my own infrastructure versus offshore dependencies. Like, what for me, is it expensive? Should I continue, or should I actually even think about making such an investment to build mine? And what do you think? Is it as expensive as we think? And if it's not as expensive as we think, should we commit to building those infrastructures?
So I would say two things. I'll start from the cost angle itself, because when you say cost, there are different ways to look at it. Because sometimes making the right investments is all that it takes sometimes, right? You want to look at what value do you get? So let's even start from the loss. What would be the cost of not pushing for sovereignty towards as a nation first, and then to individual businesses? I gave the example of that strategic dependencies. What happened if you stop having business being done to you? Or what happens when you are not even able to leverage the right data from your own economy to find solutions for, imagine making solutions for Africa that bring the right economic value, right? If you look at what you're going to lose from doing that, then you really ask yourself, are you really making a loss by investing in sovereignty? Or are you rather investing in the right future? You want to also look at business cases. Sometimes it really matters a lot, because you mentioned things like latency and the likes. So you want to ask yourself, okay, what business case really even drive the need for latency? So it's better we look at things holistically like that. Okay, you think it's expensive. What happens when you don't? What would you lose? You need to think about that. Or what would you gain from doing that? That's what I mean by business cases. So you, at the end of the day, you might see that there's actually more value in making the right investment, right? There's more value in making the right investment. And that's one. And then two, sometimes there are things that could also be done in hybrid formats. You might want to limit. So when you, because of course, people that use regular global infrastructure, because of the hyperscalers, and by hyperscalers I mean those big players that that we partner with, that mentioned, because of how they already have a large scale, it's cheaper to run some things with them. So businesses need to start thinking of how they could have like a hybrid model, so to speak, where there are certain things that you could run on a global infrastructure, and then there's certain sensitive things and then the things that you want to keep locally. That way, as an organization, you're also able to manage your spend, right? So strategically, the things that need to stay here with the right infrastructure, and then the things that can sit outside, sit outside. You also have the frameworks that you can borrow, because you can't just run everything, build everything by yourself. You can't immediately build all the right talents and the right, systems overnight. So the kind of combination that you have helps you manage things like your cost, your turnaround time, and all of that. And then also, at the end of the day, think of the end goal. What would be the business value of having this? And then what would be the cost of the loss of not having this? Those are the ways that you need to look at these things holistically.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one more question from what you were saying, and I think when we talk about sharing hybrid, it means some out there with global infrastructure and then some internally. And it would be important to touch a bit on intellectual property. How will sovereign AI shape creativity and intellectual property of the data we're storing on these different platforms? Do you think that it would help the intellectual property of those that are creating this data be better protected, or they will be better exposed?
I'll come back to governance, and more than just governance. So would AI help protect intellectual properties and all of that? If anything, I would say that we actually need to find a way, to ensure that intellectual properties are protected. I'll give a recent viral event to use as an example of what I mean. A lot of us, except you don't have access to social media, you heard this Papa Ute song that everybody, it became annoying at some point. You come on your phone and that's what it's playing. A conversation came up about it one day, saying that because that version that then went viral and was popular is literally AI generated. And people are talking about how about the real owner of this material? How is he even able to? Is he making money from it, or is all the traffic going to, or is all the traffic now going to what's being developed with AI? And it's a big conversation, right? We need to start ensuring ethics. We need to start having, and from ethics, you by yourself, you who is developing system, who is leveraging AI system, you need to think about it that the right owners of these materials, even the models that are being trained already, they're being trained with certain data, right? They are being trained with certain material, using somebody's artwork, using somebody's music, and doing all of this. Do you fairly think about, how to maybe to come up with things like revenue sharing, for example, how to see that also beyond just even revenue share, you even respect religious rights before you use them. You want to start having, and those are this even just on the layer of ethics itself. Things like this need to be in place. And that is why we've spoken about how we need to be careful about use of AI. And that's why there's creating something called ethical AI. Because even when building your system, right? When building your systems, you also want to be able to put some guardrails to how you do it. So, for example, you're asking your system to people want to do. So, think of a. I'm trying to think of a use case here. Think of an e-commerce business, for example, and you want people to be able to easily use. I'm just thinking of a solution right now to be able to easily use prompts to visualize the kind of product that they want to get from you. So, and they're able to put in logo, you do designs and all of that. Can you even put guardrails to your system that prohibits your system from maybe using popular designer logos on the creation that they're going to create before your system goes ahead to print out these fashion items? I'm thinking of an automated system. Can you build guardrails that prevent music from authors from being used in your video, your automated video that you are developing for your ad purpose, as far as you're creating revenue from it? Those kind of things need to start happening. And that's what, okay, gathers are technical layers. So how about the governance for the businesses that do this also? Those are where we now start talking about legal and ethical layers. So these kind of things need to be in place. And that's part of the conversation that we had earlier when we were talking about difference between pilot and production scaling. Governance, all of this conversation, all of these things need to be there from the scratch when you want to push AI out. So I think it's more about looking at it from this angle, actually. How can we even see that the rights of creator, the rights of intellectual property owners are not violated, which is also an issue that can then put you into trouble when you do not put all this governance in place from your AI development right from start and then you push to production. Because trust me, if somebody sues you as a major organization for violating this right, you could then definitely have to pay trillions.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions now. And we had some questions actually dropped while our webinar was going on. And first, we have that as an organization in Nigeria, what are practical steps to ensure AI solutions comply with local data sovereignty laws while still leveraging on global AI sovereignty? And I would throw that question to you, Daniel.
Oh, well, I kind of just mentioned it when I spoke about governance. It's important, but even before that, it all starts with data. Trust me, I say this a lot, but it's the truth. So first of all, organizations should even have start with data classification. You need to know what data can sit where, what data is sensitive and all of that. You start from there, right? And then you now start to look at how then do you then apply governance to this? Because once you've seen your classification, then you now start looking about governance layers. So which data can you be able to train outside? What can you train inside? What can you share? And then you start going to things like security and then compliance and all of that. It all starts from the framework that you build on before you start building your system itself, right? Look at the data that you're working with. How is it classified? Now you start thinking about the architecture of your data system itself. The way you've classified your data, what data speaks to what? Are you integrating to system? What what information is being exchanged to the systems you are integrating to. You build all of this framework with compliance in mind. The whole data sovereignty, the whole NDPR and all of this things that we mentioned, you put that from the beginning, from your foundation of how your system is being built, and then you don't have a problem. You don't bring it up after you develop an AI system and then you are testing and you are then saying, oh, it's exposing this data, all of that. So once you start from the foundation like that, from your classification of your data to the architecture of your data and how your systems interoperate, then you are able to ensure compliance.
Awesome. Thank you. We have another question which was asking about tax. Are there dedicated AI tools for tax businesses? And also during the registration for the webinar, we also got a lot of questions about specific deployment of AI in certain industries, like in disability and also in education. So are there specific AI tools or huge interest in the deployment of AI product for the tax, for education, and in the disability space? I'll still leave the question with you, Daniel, because you're in the creation of software in the daily practical sense. So please tell us more about that.
So I'll start from education space because that I'm very aware that and it's a very interesting use case and the conversations are ongoing. Systems are already being developed actually in the education space. And you would ask me what do we need AI? I'll just give two instances that makes it very, very important. Think about adaptive learning. And that is why we need to embrace technology. Now, before now, or the traditional way of teaching people, you have one, especially some of us that went to government secondary school, we have an idea what it is. When the number of you in the class and then one teacher that you have shouting, I would remember how teachers would come and then flog the hell out of you when you can't even hear them from the back, right? Some students catch up slow. Some students catch up faster. And we even have different ways we learn. Some people learn things logically. Some people want to just take calculations and jump on it. My point is different speed for learning, different methods of learning. Everybody have way to learn. And it's very difficult to have that your one teacher to 100 students deliver that kind of attention to all your students, right? Especially when you now scale up. But when you have AI systems that are being deployed, you're able to do something called adaptive learning. You are able to take in behavior of your learner, right? See what they respond to. You're also able to do automated course content. So you do an assessment, you see how well this person is doing, then you know if you need to move to an advanced topic and all of that. So that alone already provides, it bridges a lot of gap. Let's not just start calling our kids to load. Let's build the right system to help them become smarter. And AI can help you do that. It sees how the learner reasons and then it adapts the learning style, learning content, even the speed of the learning. So this is one major use case of AI in the education sector, and these are things that have been looked at already. Now look at another part of assisting teachers and facilitators. When you have lesson notes, if anybody has done anything around the teaching space, you know what it is to do lesson notes. Lesson notes are very, very hectic, let me tell you. And then you have teachers that need to create, when you have teachers taking multiple subjects, you have to create your notes, all of that. And beyond that, so you are doing that, you also need to set exams, you also need to mark exam for a number of students and all of that. Now we can start talking about AI systems that can develop course content. Beyond developing course content, develop assessments. Literally, the meeting that we had earlier today, we just spoke about using AI to develop an assessment. Now, beyond developing the assessment, can also do automated grading. Look at the amount of work is taken from the teacher. And then of course, so there's something called human in the loop systems. It's important to think about that. So you have your human who then still goes ahead and verify and confirm all of this, but all of this makes life easier in the education sector. So that's the first step. We spoke about tax. And into Nigerian markets, I can't say how well, but I know globally there are already systems that support tax, right? And beyond, and some of them are not just built as independent systems on their own; they are embedded into other systems. So you want to, and it's the way AI could work. So AI does not need to start becoming siloed products here and there. It can be embedded in larger systems. There are a lot of financial systems, your ERP systems, and all of that you use in these industries. right? Your banking solutions that is this industry. You can now start having AI modules being attached to them to help with this. And what can this thing do? It can easily help you do like compliance checks, tax laws. But now everybody's talking about new tax laws and all of that. Imagine having a module in your payroll system who will immediately check how your payroll is broken down to see if it complies with the new tax law that you have put in as a knowledge base to pick from, right? So those are use cases where it works. In terms of, but the last one you mentioned is quite interesting. I know that we already have things in that area, disability, inclusion for disabled people, but how well we can, I don't think we do. And beyond AI, as a people generally, we need to do more for those people. I don't even like to say disabled people. I would just say I can't find the right word, but people that basically need more leverage. They need more. They need more support to have to even the playing field for them. Already we have systems like text to speech, image recognition that helps people who can't see very well. We have the text to speech for people, with motor control issues. All of those systems are already in place for AI. But it's definitely something that we can continue to look forward to see how we can make this more inclusive for them, even as we build our general systems, actually.
Thank you, Daniel. The integration of AI it's really embedded in everything. AI tools are being used in recruitment. There are tools now where before your CV gets even to the recruiter, the AI has sieved through the applications. In the hospitals now, there are AI assistants helping the doctor take notes so the doctor is more focused on what is going on. I did sign a waiver the other day trying to speak to a doctor and like, oh, would you want an AI assistant in the consultation? I was like, interesting. So there's definitely more integration of AI, and also to add a bit to the disability side of things, there's definitely also AI for disabled people to be more engaging in day-to-day activities. Even in this Zoom, I can see there's closed captions here, and that's actually to help for those that maybe have a screen reader that is reading back to them. In our Microsoft tools, there are screen readers as well, functions embedded into it. So there is definitely interest in creating more programs for the disability sector as a whole. So yeah, I agree with you in those. And tax is still a new thing, especially in Nigeria with the whole new tax law. By probably the end of the year or maybe early next year, we'll catch up because tax has been integrated for other countries. They pay, it's quite easy. You tap here, and it's simplified. So we'll catch up with that with tax. We're still even coming around the idea of Nigerians paying tax. Let's be honest, guys. So technology for that, we'll catch up with it. Yeah, thank you very much. So my next question is to Daniel and sorry, to Kingsley. You've sort of touched a bit on it earlier when I was asking for comparison of different markets, but this person would like to know, are there lessons that Nigerian enterprises can learn from other emerging markets that have successfully scaled AI, and are we still lacking behind? You're muted, Kingsley.
Yes, there are a series of lessons that Nigerian markets can learn from emerging markets, especially on the integration of AI. I think that's the question. Lessons Nigerian market can learn from other countries on the integration of AI. Yes, I believe that actually a lot of lessons that Nigerian markets can learn. And one of the lessons, particularly from China, when China released their DeepSeek some 2 years ago, or last year, the entire world was shocked. And this was a shock. We've had series of talks about building a foundational model, the cost, the infrastructure, the cost particularly, and the data and so on. And when China came up with their DeepSeek, that was a big motivation for everybody. because people now believe that, oh, so if it is easy, I mean, maybe not easy, because when foundational models first came up, it was painted as something that was impossible. They'll tell you that they've been building it for 12 years and they just released it now. They started in 2009. The past series of founders. So Chinese came up and they did it in a many. And do you know that when Chinese built their foundational model, it gave room, it gave people, other countries, other organizations, this idea that, okay, building this thing is possible, right? So these are lessons that Nigerian can learn. Building sovereign AI is not something that is impossible. It is possible. And also, we might not have to wait for a perfect time to build it, even in organizations too. Organizations will look at, okay, we do not have these, we do not have what it takes. There is no perfect time actually to integrate AI into your work. I think the perfect time is now. And what people also look at is that people, they are looking at a situation where, you will just build everything on your own and by own. I think when it comes to business enterprise, as the world is going now, what works is collaboration. Collaboration as it relates to what leveraging on your competitive advantage. So let me give an instance. For instance, companies in Nigeria are already leveraging AI to get things done. Now, if you look at it, that doesn't mean that the companies themselves built these AI tools. Most of them are fine-tuned. Most of them are trained. In fact, most of bots you see, WhatsApp bots, customer support bots, all these are not things that are built. They are just pre-built. They're not pre-built. They are, you are building on the foundation based probably on your customers' data, fine-tuning it to make it to work. So what I'm saying is that these are lessons, right, that you can learn. You can learn that first, there's no perfect time to build a sovereign AI system. If you're looking for perfect time, then you're looking for when would the regulations be available? When would the funding be available? When would the talent be available? When would the infrastructure be available? All these things are they can be, factors that slow us down. Start the way you are and start with something that is within your capacity. So, for instance, organizations that are unable to afford, premium AI tool, that are unable to afford an AI engineer in the organization, just look internally within your competence, right? Look internally with your competence and bring up solutions that could meet your current state while also being being helpful to your business growth. Because honestly, whether we like it or not, AI at this stage that we are in the world is a competitive advantage for any country or any government or even any enterprise. Either you're using the free version, you're using the paid version, it is a competitive advantage. So my thought is start the way you are. Countries are coming up, and for me, China seems to be like one of the biggest motivation for any country right now. You just see a lot of, and then that's motivated. I mean, China coming up brought a lot of, if you look at it right now, you see a lot of models coming from that side, from Asia. You see this, so much of them. So what I'm saying is that start the way you are. It might not be perfect, right? It gets better. You keep fine tuning, but the whole idea is start the way you are and keep moving.
Thank you for that. We have one other question, and it's on risk management and governance. And it says, how can organizations implement effective AI governance that balance innovation and accountability? And I want to bring the question to you, Daniel, because of the word innovation, because of creating and intellectual properties at play when you speak about innovation. So it's very key to understand how internal policies can be able to govern that. And I feel like in your role, this is something would have that you would have come across in your day-to-day practice. So could you please help us answer this question? Oh, I think we've lost Daniel. So I would hold on that question when he comes back because we have another question, which I believe will be our final question, and I'll throw that to Kingsley. And the question is about what, as an organization in Nigeria, what are practical steps to ensure AI solutions comply? Sorry, as an organization in Nigeria, what are practical steps to ensure AI solutions comply with local data sovereignty laws while still leveraging global AI capabilities? And I'll throw that to you, Kingsley.
Okay. We encourage that organizations, are first locally compliant while competing globally. To ensure that you're compliant, first, as I often say, let us just keep aside the idea of there's no AI law, there's no AI law. Let us keep it aside. Look within your organization. What exactly do you do? And what are the laws that regulate what you do? Starting from the principal regulation here is the NDPA, which is the Nigerian Data Protection Act. Right. First, you need to understand that to be locally compliant, first in this age, you need to know, are you processing personal data? Do you collect names? Do you collect phone numbers? Do you collect email address? Do you collect phone address? Do you collect health data? Do you collect geographical data is a bit extreme. Do you collect all these data that are identifiable? Do you collect them? The first, at the basic level, is to ensure that you are, compliant on data processing. What are the structures you are putting in place for the collection? What are the structures you are putting in place for the storage? What are the collection, storage, and all together they form what we call the processing. What are the structures? And for the structure here, it won't mean as far back as, it won't mean, as extreme as getting an officer in charge of your data. We call them DPOs, data protection officers. They would really guide on how to properly process data. Once you've been able to close on that, the next thing is that you look at, if there are any consumer protection laws that govern your niche, if you are compliant with it. I think these are just the local compliance measures you could put in place, because most times regulators will not tell you they're coming after you. Sometimes they just show up, and once they show up, you have to pay penalty. I mean, you start paying fine or penalty. So to be able to ensure that you are locally focused, but you are locally local but global, is you look locally the laws, the regulations within, and then aside from the laws now that refers to the laws that local that nationally govern the niche, you also within the organization, I always encourage it that you need to put internal policies as to the processing of personal data, internal policies as it relates to the use of AI, and you must remind your staffs every day. I mean, in the most easiest way, remind them, because once you reinforce this, it gets into them. It's not about you just writing 10 pages of document and giving it to people while you're onboarding, employee onboarding. It goes beyond that, but reinforcing it at your meetings, reinforcing it and ensuring that there is a governance structure for it, starting from the C-level executives. They should lead by examples, right? If you are expecting that your company should be compliant with local regulation, this compliance you must lead it. And while you're leading it, it's easier for people to follow, because people usually they follow what you do, not doing what you say. So in summary, what I'm saying is that first you must look at what are the laws that globally that nationally regulate what you do as an organization, starting with the foundation of the data protection, because if you're using AI, whether you like it or not, you are processing data. If you are not sincere, as far as you're using AI, there's a way data finds its way, it creeps into the AI you use. And then afterwards, the next thing you are looking at, putting up an organization policy that you must put up strategies for implement to enforce it, strategies to keep people compliant, and strategies to ensure that you are not going outside the scope of what the usage of technology.
Thank you so much, Kingsley. And just to add to that, it's actually not a suggestion for organizations to set up policies that regulate data processing in their organizations. Section 39(1) of Nigeria Data Protection Act actually mandates data controllers, data processors to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures intentionally designed to ensure the security, integrity, and confidentiality of personal data in their possession or under their control. So it's a mandate by law. So it's for organizations to understand this, have the appropriate people in their teams that can help them actualize this requirement. So yeah, thank you for that question. And our last question is to Daniel. We're happy to have you back. The question is relating to risk management and governance and how organizations can implement effective AI governance that balances innovation and accountability. And I feel like this is something that you must have come across in your day-to-day practice. So happy to hear your answer on that.
Yes, definitely. In fact, this goes beyond AI, but of course, it also plays in AI. Once you're designing systems, you want to, because you do not want to slow the process, especially when you're working with a fast-paced team, bright minds. You don't want to kill creativity, you don't want to kill the innovation, but you still want things that you want governance in place. I'll say two things: risk classification and governance here, or rather, I think governance by design, basically. So, what are the things that you can do, right, to ensure that you the right AI governance? First of all, the governance itself needs to be a way of doing things, right? It's a framework already in your system, right? If it's a framework, it's not, it no longer comes to feel like a prohibition. We're already used to that way of doing things. But then how can we foster innovation to speed and all of that? When I say risk classification, you are thinking, what AI system are you building? What is it supposed to do? So, example, are you just building something to be used by some internal teams, right? A few people in the team and all of that. If that's the case, there might be some governance criteria that you might allow, right? You can relax a few things just for the use case, as against when you're doing something for external use case. Or imagine you're building a fraud detection system, and then you do not put in the right you don't ensure the right framework in what you're doing, and then your system is calling me out for fraud. I'm trying to access my funds, for example, and then restricting me from, yeah, I'm going to put you in trouble if I'm a customer, you're doing that kind of system, right? And even if it's internal too, what exactly is the system working on? So look at, I'm trying to be practical here. Okay, look at, say, an AI system for HR that is supposed to make decision on when I get a promotion. And you are not thorough in the governance of that. You're not thorough in what guides those decision making and all of that. And then I'm denied of it. It can literally put business in trouble. So what I'm saying that is that while you want to have, for critical systems like that, you don't relax. You ensure as much governance level as you can ensure. And then for the ones that are less critical, then you might be able to give them. So that way you're balancing speed, innovation, and then you're still balancing accountability. Also from the beginning, also, because of you mentioned accountability, who owns what, from the beginning of your, especially for critical systems, you are not just starting from the AI engineer himself saying, build with this. From the framework, from the foundation of it, you have the right stakeholders, your security person, the security and compliance person within your team, this person involved from the beginning, or team rather. Are your legal team already advising what boundaries you're crossing and all of that? The right stakeholders at the executive level, like they, dare to give advice from the beginning before you get to that your production level. Another thing to also encourage innovation are sandboxes. Sandboxes are basically test environments, and you're sure that whatever you have there does not go to production. If you want to balance speed, because I think that's where this person is coming from. If you want to balance speed and governance, so while you're in your sandbox phase, You're not doing anything production yet and all of that. Yeah, play, go ahead, do a lot of things. But by the time you want to say we want to move to production, then we are ensuring all the right governance is checked. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. And yeah, that's actually the final question that we have today, and also final question from the questions that we collected during registration. We've been able to touch a bit on all of these. And to bring everything to a close, since we're still on you, Daniel, I want your final comment or like your final word of advice to different creators, different CEOs, CTOs that might be listening to us today. What would be your final comment to them, your advice to them in how to be able to manage their data or in terms of influencing how sovereign AI is implemented in Nigeria? Just a few words on that, please.
So I would say two things that we've spoken about. Number one, I'll say get your foundations right. Speed is great, but get your foundations right. If you do not start with the right foundation, and by foundation, I'm saying your framework, your governance, all of that, how data moves around. If you do not get it right, you pay the price for it. That's one. Number two, when we say cost, always think of other factors like the risk and the value. So you're afraid of spending that money, you're afraid of what the cost would be. Think of what happens if you do not make the right investment. You can suffer loss and then you can pay bigger penalties. Thanks.
Thank you. And Kingsley, what will be your final nuggets of wisdom for us today?
Yeah, my parting words, not far from what Daniel had said, is that you cannot, when you're looking at the lens of AI ethics, you cannot build a right technology on the wrong foundation. So when you're building, ensure that you are making your foundation really solid by complying with all that needs to be complied with, and that way to be easier to have sovereignty over the AI that's operates in your organization.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much to Kingsley, and thank you so much to Daniel, and thank you so much to our wonderful audience and giving us quite exciting and engaging questions. I've been Daisy, and thanks for having me. I'm going to hand back to my co-host Olamide to give us her own parting words.
Thank you very much, Ada. Thank you very much, Kingsley and Daniel, to the audience. We really appreciate you. So today we have learned that moving into AI readiness, especially for Nigeria, is not a day beyond finances because there's a lot of questions. And I think Kingsley has said that it is surprising that finances is not even the major issue, that when you have conversations with these businesses, finances is not even the major problem that they are having. So that means that beyond finances, there's more to being AI ready and that we need the right foundation. So sovereignty, auditability, ethics, compliance, these are words that were used today, but they're more than just buzzwords. They're actually requirements that we need for the next generation of AI and in the Nigerian industry, in the Nigerian tech industry. So thank you once again to Daniel, to Kingsley for providing this roadmap for us. And to Ada, our co-moderator, to moderator today, say thank you to him. To the audience, thank you for joining. Actually, I think it will be best if our audience are able to connect with the panelists off the webinar, so say social media. So everybody would give their preferred social media choice, say LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you think is the best place you'd for the audience to connect with you and maybe ask questions or follow up with what you're doing, would do that. So start with Ada, Kingsley, Daniel, and myself. So
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you again, Olamide, and it was great moderating this session. It was nice and I learned even more things than I thought. So thank you again for having this. To connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Adaeze Precious Moba, and also you can find me on Instagram at Kleinfeld LP, which is our law firm and HR consulting firm that we are. So Kleinfeld LP, KLEINFELD. LP. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Thank you.
thank you very much, Ada. Daniel.
Yeah, thank you very much again. Yeah, basically LinkedIn, I still accept invites, I accept connections. Very, very, I will always engage you. And that's just search, look up my name, Daniel Ubiri, and definitely very open to connecting.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Kingsley.
Yes, thank you once again. You can find me on all social media platforms with Kingsley Owadera, primarily with LinkedIn, and here and there on IG and also on X. But Kingsley Owadera.
Okay, thank you. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Olamide A. Daniel and on Instagram at Mude Daniel. So, and you can follow Africa Tech Radio also on all social media platforms. Special appreciation goes to Descasio, Africa Tech Radio for putting this together. Also our partners, Pan Africa Center for AI Ethics and Kleinfeld LP. Thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.